Hello, we are Team 8, and this is our Project 3. We chose to do the 15 puzzle game, and our team members are myself, Arjun Nair, Scott Ross, our leader, Zhiyang Sun, and Vighnesh Unnithan. Why we chose this option? Here are some answers from our team members. Zhiyang said, I'm not sure why I selected this option. Maybe because puzzles are easy to code and not very hard for a newbie. Scott said, I wanted to choose this option because I thought it would be a bit easier to code and more fun for the user to play. Vighnesh said puzzles, especially this, have a nostalgic impact on me, and they are an intuitive learning experience, which is why I chose this task. I said I grew up doing puzzles and mind benders, and choosing this option made sense to me in order to bring back the enjoyment that I had growing up. Here's some CSS and HTML files for the formation of the tiles. So we have all the CSS attributes for 1 through 16 tiles. And our 16 tile is just an empty square. So basically this would just be a placeholder so we can move, so the tiles are able to move around freely. And here are the individual divs for all of the 16 tiles within our main div for the game screen. And we also have the individual positions for all of the tiles. And this is the unjumbled version. So once you shuffle it, we have a shuffle function that would move it around a lot more. We added some hover attribute. So I can show this in the demonstration, but if you hover over a tile that is able to move, meaning that if there's space next to it that it's able to move into, the user can place their cursor over the tile and the border of the tile would change to red. The text or the number on the tile would be underlined. The tile color would become light blue, and the cursor would change to a clickable pointer like a hand. Here's some extra features that we added: an end of game notification. So we added a span within the HTML which would display the final win screen, suppose the user were to complete the game. End of game notification. This is our JavaScript for what would display in that win span in the HTML. So we have some HTML text which displays finally, total time in seconds, and also the time elapsed, and we have a counter for the time elapsed and the moves count. So it would display that, as well as a final GIF that says bravo, you win. And it would also end the timer so that it doesn't keep going on when we display it in the final screen. Animations and or transitions. And this is in our JavaScript. So we have a function called animate movement, which would animate the tile's movement up, down, left, or right. So we have it right here. Animate up, animate right, animate down, and animate left. And we have a function called swap pieces, which moves pieces. And this calls the animate movement function in the JavaScript. And also calls the move counter. This is when the user starts the game. It would call the move counter, display the board, and finally it would check if they won. We also have animations and or transitions in our CSS. So this is for the animation of the tile, or the clickable tile. So the transition would be about a 0.5 second delay, and it would move, or the animation length would be 0.5 seconds, and it would slowly move. So ease in, out into the empty pocket. So, and these are the individual: animate up, animate down, animate left, and animate right. And these transformations would translate each tile up 100 pixels, down 100 pixels, left 100 pixels, and a right 100 pixels. And game time with some music file. So these functions control the game timer. It would start the time. We have a console a log that keeps track of the timer, and this is our timer variable. End timer. So once the game is over, or once the user maybe refreshes, it would end the time, and then function reset time. So if a user were to refresh the file or move backwards to the web page, it would show the time elapsed as 0 and display that in the inner HTML. Then we have the function move counter. Function move counter, which would increase the move count and then display this in the while the user is playing. And then function reset count would reset the moves count variable to 0 and then display that in the final game screen or while the user is playing. Game time with some music file, and here we have some functions that basically play a random song within our downloaded music files. So once the game is started or once the user clicks shuffle, it would start playing this music file. And then we have the final stop song, which resets the music or the audio file's start time to 0 and stop the music. Multiple backgrounds, and these backgrounds are for the tiles or the game board and for the puzzle background, and we have 4 different types of backgrounds: Mario, Luigi, Mario 2, and Toad. And this is basically a drop-down list that the user could select, and anytime they select, it would call the change background function and change it to either Mario, Luigi, Mario 2, or Toad. Multiple backgrounds, puzzle background, starts the game to play, displays a random image, and creates the board. So what this function does is once the user selects an option, it would start the game, or it would call the function game begin and go through each tile and change each tile's background to whatever the user selected. Multiple backgrounds. This also allows a user to change the background image. And finally, we have a random web page background selection. Creates a random web page background selection variable, and then calls the background selection function, and depending on what the user selects, it would display that background for our game web page. Shuffle algorithm. So once the user clicks shuffle, it would call the rest function and play new music every time the shuffle button is called. This function reinitializes the shuffle T array. And we have different switch cases for basically where each tile would move to once the user clicks shuffle. And finally, it would display the board. And we have a summary page as well. In our demonstration, we have a summary web page that I will display, and which basically goes into what the game is, what our project is, our description, and our members. So let me move over to the demonstration now. So this is our 15 puzzle. The goal of the 15 puzzle is to unjumble its 15 squares by repeatedly making moves that slide squares into the empty space. How quickly can you solve it? So we have a drop down for each of the 4 tile backgrounds. So we can click Mario, Luigi, Mario 2, and Toad. And the function that I showed earlier, which basically changes each individual tile, that's where that function comes into play. So once the user selects one of these backgrounds, it would change each of these individual tiles to basically create a collage of that final piece. And we also have a choose background. So the user could select fall, spring, water, and mountains. and we have a shuffle button, which basically will start the timer and the move count. So once I click that, so now we have our empty square, and these are the 15 different tiles. You can see that the timer has started, and moves are still at 0 because I haven't moved any tiles yet. But suppose I were to move this left, it would increase each move by 1, like that. Increase that. So I'll just try to get 1 and 2 in place right now. So we can see that suppose I were to hover over any of these tiles, there's no open space next to these, so nothing is happening to the tile in terms of the CSS styling. But you can see that there's an empty tile right here, so it's possible that I can move 8, 12, or 4. So if I hover over 8, so you can see there's a red border, 8 is underlined, and the color kind of fades into this light blue color. So then I can move it, and so I was having some recording difficulties, but I added this clip to the end. But yeah, I tried completing it, but I'm not too good at this puzzle, so no worries. Our team members found a web page that helps you solve the 15 puzzle, and there's like a technique to it. But if you were to go through this, you should be able to complete that puzzle in no time. But yeah, and we have a little bit of history that we added to the bottom of this about the puzzle. So American puzzle author and mathematician Sam Lloyd is often falsely credited with creating the puzzle. Indeed, Lloyd claimed from 1891 until his death in 1911 that he invented it. However, the puzzle was actually created around 1874 by Noyes Palmer Chapman, a postmaster in Canastota, New York. Here we have the HTML validation for our files. And this also includes the CSS validation as well. So the validator says that there's no errors found. And to show that your readers that you've taken the care to create an interoperable web page, you may display this icon on any page that validates. And that's why we have the links to both the HTML validator and the CSS validator at the top. And we're also able to donate a copy of this. And here's our valid CSS information, and this has gone through the validator as well, so seems to be no issue. And we have the different background class CSS attributes for Mario, Luigi, Mario 2, Toad, and each individual tile, as well as the position that I had shown in the presentation earlier. The clickable animation, the hover, windscreen, the win image, the timer, moves, animate up, animate down, animate left, animate right, and the validation. HTML body, the wrapper, main class, and each tile's attributes. And finally, we go to our summary. So our leader's name is Scott Ross. Project name, Project 3 JavaScript, Mario 15 puzzle. Our project recreates a 15 puzzle game in JavaScript. We chose this project over Conway's Game of Life because we thought that the implementation would be more straightforward using only JavaScript. We were also more interested in creating a playable and fun game for people. And here's our team members: Arjun, Scott Ross, Zhiyang, Vighnesh, Unnithan. And here's our different YouTube links and PowerPoint links, which don't really lead to anything right now, but they should be operable once we submit this project. And that is all for our project. Thank you. We are Team 8, and this is our 15 puzzle for Project 3.